Hello everyone and welcome to the Dyslexia Life Hack Show. I'm your host Matthew Head, and in this episode I'm talking to Lee Povey. He's the founder of Maximize Your Potential Coaching, where he's a human performance strategist partnering with CEOs and organizations. He's a former professional athlete in track cycling and has also coached athletes as well, as a particular highlight being the Olympic development coach for Team USA Cycling. As always, I'll put links to Lee's company as well as other things we talk about in the show notes, which will be available at dyslexialifehacks.com/podcast. Welcome to the show, Lee.
Hey, Matthew.
So where I want to dig into at the beginning of this podcast, and I'm looking at your room behind you with lots of cycling jerseys, is where did your love of cycling start?
We're going to blame my dad for that. So my dad was a lifelong cyclist. Like many young boys and men, I used to watch my dad do it and think, oh, I can beat you. When can I start racing you?
Yeah, when can I start?
I did a bunch of sports as a young man. Swimming was probably my first kind of high performance sport as a youngster. Then I played rugby, was school captain for a little while. And then I wasn't allowed to, at that time, you couldn't do competitive cycling or track cycling until you were 13. So I had to wait until I was 13. But then, when I became 13, I was allowed to race on the track, and off we went, and I started doing track cycling.
So did track cycling become because your dad did that, or because then rugby legs were good for power rather than doing long distance stuff out on the roads?
Probably the other way around. You are born what you're born, and I was born a sprinter.
Right, I see.
I was pretty skinny as a kid until I hit 16, and then I just put a bunch of muscle on in 1 year as the good old testosterone kicked in.
Yeah.
So even when I was skinny, I was always very explosive. I wasn't necessarily incredibly strong, and that was the difference between me being world class at an elite level as a young man and just being good nationally. I wasn't quite as strong as some of my compatriots, but I was very explosive. So I always had really good speed and good acceleration, but they were some of them just a little bit physically stronger than me. But yeah, sprinting chooses you. And as I became a coach, you see this so evidently. You see lots of athletes that do endurance cycling, because endurance cycling is the massive part of the sport. You think the Tour de France, that's the part that before track cycling got popular in the UK, nobody knew about the sprint aspect of it. Yeah. So endurance cycling is massive worldwide. Track cycling is a very small niche of that. And I would be constantly finding athletes that, just look twice the size of everybody else on the bike, or, they were really fast for 30 seconds and then they were struggling for anything longer than that. And they're trying to be endurance athletes. I'm like, why are you doing that? Why don't you give this sprinting thing a go?
Yeah. If you're a power person, being more of a strength orientated myself, I get that. Endurance is never my thing.
No.
Yeah, that's interesting. And did you do a lot of this to escape from school? Because we know you're dyslexic. So do you find, maybe looking back in hindsight, that actually some of the throwing yourself at sports, and you got to a high level, was a little bit of a way of, I'm good at this, and school, not so much?
Probably. Yeah. Let's do a therapy session here and find it out. I was very good at school, but in certain areas.
Okay.
So It's funny. I put a post on. I recently did this is a massive tangent, but we'll come back. I recently did a psilocybin assisted therapy journey, which was awesome. And one of the things that came from that was have less fear about writing publicly. Obviously, being dyslexic, writing publicly, do people going to understand it? Do they care? Yeah. And I wrote a post about being back at school and being dyslexic. And one of my friends at school reached out to me and messaged me and made me remember that actually I was top of the school, or me and him were top of the school in maths, physics, and chemistry.
Yes.
And at A-level, the first exam of the year in maths and chemistry, I got the highest results of the entire school. But my English was remedial at best. Any subject that required English, you thinking history, geography, subjects that needed writing, I didn't particularly enjoy. I loved learning, and I'm incredibly curious, but I hated the homework. I didn't understand how to do homework. My mum didn't understand how to help me do homework. I was bright enough that I could get out of it. I was the king of excuses to my teachers. Like I was a genius at excuses. Yeah. So I used my intellect, but I didn't get what I could have done from school. And the message that I got at school was always, you're very gifted and you're very lazy. So that was the dichotomy that got set up for me was, you're smart, but you're lazy. Now, when I share that with people in my life now, they just can't get it because nobody knows me as lazy. I'm very driven. I work hard. I've accomplished a reasonable amount. And those things have come from hard work. You can't be a high-level athlete without hard work.
No, definitely not. No.
So it's not so much that I was lazy. It was that I just didn't know how to do things. And I didn't have somebody that was looking in and going, oh, because you learn differently from other people. So we need to approach this in a different way. So school was an awkward experience for me. You know, I remember sitting in the playground and reading 1984 because my English teacher had said, like, you're a smart boy, start reading some interesting stuff.
Okay.
And yeah.
Well.
Yeah. She loved me. And
good.
You know, I went from barely being able to read to reading complex novels. But I couldn't write and I couldn't share what I was reading. And even reading itself, I could read, but I'd have to reread it to learn stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, coming back to your question, probably sport was a good escape for me. And it was a way to feel good about myself.
Yeah.
You know, like most young people, I'm looking for ways to be recognized and loved. And, you know, another little bit of a tangent. My dad was not a particularly good human being. But cycling was his sport. So that was the one way I got recognized by my dad. He never watched me play rugby. I swam for my county, never came to watch me swim. I did school plays and stuff like that. He never come and watched any of that. The only thing he ever cared about was cycling. So big shock. I got into cycling.
Yeah. Blimey. Don't tell me you're also really good at rebuilding the bikes after you'd used it.
Yeah, but I don't enjoy it, so I don't do it.
No.
As soon as I could afford it, I would pay someone else to do that.
Yeah, wow. That's talk about different motivations. It's interesting. I was similar at school in terms of being really good at the science and the mathy subject, and I love history, but really poor writing essays, like you cited. But I knew I was dyslexic because I knew from 6 years old. So it was just that was that, and had the extra time, and it was never quite enough. But you've only found out quite recently, haven't you? So what age are you now? And you've only just found out recently. So how did that go?
I turned 50 just over a month ago.
Yeah.
I suspected. I mean, I remember I had a real estate business, and my colleagues would just whinge at me for writing messages down, like backwards. And they'd be like, who's this person? What's their name? What does this message mean? They couldn't read my writing. I've really struggled my entire life to write in a way that people can read it.
Yes. Yeah.
Writing in cursive, nobody could read my writing in cursive. So then I'd write in all capitals to make it easier for people, and still it would be very difficult. I mean, spell check, things like Grammarly completely changed my life. Siri, being able to say a word into an object that then can spell it for me, because often I can't spell it well enough for spell check to find out what it is.
Yeah.
So as a young man, I would have to work around not being able to find the word I wanted to use.
Yeah.
So, I'd have a word in my mind, and how I explain it to people is it's like 1,000 drawers being opened at the back of my mind, trying to find the word I want to use.
Yeah.
And the drawer just didn't open it. And then I have to work around it. So I think it helped me be very quick on my feet linguistically to kind of like, okay, I can't say that. I've now got to quickly invent what I want to say instead of the word that I wanted to use. But yeah, I was sitting with my wife at her family house. I think it was 3 years ago now. And I was on a coaching course. So I was moving from being a sports coach to a leadership coach and a company performance coach. And I was on this course. And what often happens for me, and this has happened in this course, I'm either the smartest guy in the room or the dumbest guy in the room. And I'm like, I don't get this. Like, how does this work?
Yeah.
I'm around people, and I can tell I'm smarter than them. And I don't mean that in a narcissistic way. I mean, like, my cognitive ability is good.
Yeah.
But I'm not grasping the subject like they are. Like, how is this happening?
Yeah.
And I spoke to the course creators and we're talking about it. And one of them suggested neurodiversity. And as I said, I've been told by people in my life, oh, you're dyslexic. And I thought it was a tease.
Okay.
I think the biggest thing from it for me, owning my own shame, was I didn't want to take tests for dyslexia, find out I wasn't dyslexic and that I was just dumber than I thought I was. That's how I had produced it in my mind. Like, if I take tests for dyslexia and there's not actually a reason why I can't do these things, well, then I'm just not as smart as I think I am. And my fragile ego at that point couldn't cope with it. Now I've done therapy, coaching, all the stuff that I've done. I didn't care as much about that. And I'm like, I just need to get this sorted because I want to learn better. And, after 15 years of being a sports coach, I was moving into a new career. And although there was crossover, I was able to learn again a lot of new stuff. Yeah. I wanted that learning process to go better. So I went online, looked up dyslexia, started taking these tests, and every test was coming back with the same results. And it wasn't just, they were like mild, moderate, severe. Every single one was coming back severe dyslexia. And I remember one particularly, it labeled dyslexia as 6 components. And I tested severe to moderate in 5 of the 6. And I think it was like severe in 4, moderate in 1 of the different components of that. And it really made me think, wow.
Yeah.
This is something I've carried my whole life.
Yeah.
And to the point that it's kind of made me try to overachieve to prove to myself that I'm as smart as I think I am, if that makes sense.
It does. And that was going to be leading to my next question. I suppose turning this into a therapy session, but but do you think you mentioned your father as well, that some of the drive that drove you as an athlete and as a coach, being in Olympic development teams is no small feat as a coach, is it? After retiring as an athlete, I assume. Do you think some of the drive from that was also the thing that it's the negative side you just explained, with all the shame of worrying that if you found out you weren't dyslexic, that you were just not the person you thought you were? But do you think all the rest of that drove you on during your athletic career?
Well, I had an interesting career. So I was on the national team as a junior, realised I wasn't going to go win an Olympics. So junior 17 to 18.
So it's UK, was it?
This is UK. So 15, I got onto the national team with the aim that I would have gone to the junior worlds at 17, 18. I had a really bad coach, and that's a different story, but my coach was terrible, both in their knowledge of physiology and the training they were giving me. So they were giving me endurance training to be a sprinter, and the way that they understood psychology. So, give me an example. My coach went to the Junior World Championships, which I was due to go to the next year, came back and said, no British rider's ever going to win anything. The East Germans, the Russians, the Italians, they're too big, they're too strong.
All right.
I'm 6'2" and 200 pounds. So, 14 and a half stone.
Yeah.
And I was about that size at 16. I wasn't really much smaller. And this guy's telling me I'm, like the British aren't going to win, they're too small. I'm like, well, I'm as big as any of the others, if not bigger.
Yeah.
So I had a bad coaching experience. But I also knew that while I was reasonably gifted, I was smart enough to know I wasn't that extra 5% needed to go and win the Olympics. And at that time in UK, it was before lottery funding. So there was no funding in sport. It was not going to be a career. If I'd come into it 5 or 10 years later with the funding that they had then, it might have been different. I might have had a career in it.
Yes.
So I quit sport then.
Okay.
I still competed for fun, but I became a real estate agent, worked for a large corporate company, kept getting promoted, and then thought, well, I could do this better for myself, had my own real estate agency. And then I came back to sport in my early 30s and started competing again, and actually competed at a higher level then because I understood physiology myself. I got curious about it. I, by this point, understood psychology and was able to coach myself to national championships. That was then when my coaching career started with other athletes, because people were like, oh, do you want to coach me? Like, sure, why not? And I just did it for fun. And originally I did it because I didn't like training by myself. I'm a community trainer. So although I can be very reliable if I'm in a community, if I'm training by myself, I'm not reliable. Or at least I wasn't then. I'm a bit more reliable now, but certainly as a young man, like I needed to be with other people. I'm intensely competitive, and that's what drove me to train really hard. So I created these communities, started coaching young people. But yeah, I became a real estate agent. University was not really an option for me.
No.
Both because I didn't understand how to learn and I didn't have the support on how to learn and do homework and structure my life properly.
Yeah.
My family went through a breakup. My mum didn't really have any money. Like financially, it would have been very difficult. So I need to earn some money. I need to join the real world. And you do what you do if you're bright but you don't have an education. You go into sales. That's the avenue.
Yeah.
And you have two types of salesmen.
Yeah,
you have really smart people that have fallen into it and don't really want to do it, me. And by the time I sold my real estate business 12 years later, I hated it. Hated being a salesman. And then you have people that love being a salesman, and that is the pinnacle. Like, that's what they want. That's what they're going to do. And they love it and love everything that goes with it. That was never me. I just was smart enough to get away with it.
Yeah. It's really interesting because I've talked to quite a few people in this podcast. You get quite a lot of people in marketing and sales, STEM, and a bit of washing between, but I've never heard anybody put it quite like that. You do what really smart people do, but don't have the university education going to sales.
Yeah, because you can make a lot of money if you're smart in sales. Good salespeople get really well rewarded. And as a 22, 23-year-old, I was earning more money than any of my friends.
Yeah, and that's really interesting. And I'm kind of seeing now with you sort of, I guess you teach yourself the sales, and then you decided that you got promoted quickly, so clearly you're good at it, and then realize that your own business is probably a better idea. And you also self-taught yourself how to coach. Now, that's quite a good sort of wide set of skills there, and probably a lot of pattern recognition. You were mentioning physiology. It also, that tends to lead into sort of dyslexic strengths, that kind of ability to be able to see things, pull things together and absorb information, the bigger picture. And it kind of is really interesting how it's all sort of pulling together, but they're almost two distinct things, aren't they? Sales versus coaching and cycling, and getting sort of geeky about that as well as into sales. Or am I misreading?
Yes and no. What is sales? Sales is basically understanding other human beings so that you can find ways to connect with them, because people buy from people they like. So I used to teach sales, and the most important thing in sales is getting other people to like you. Luckily, I'm reasonably likable. So that was I'm a decent human, and I was the salesman that never lied. I remember one of my colleagues, we had a financial advisor, and when I worked at a corporate agency, I was the top referrer to the financial advisor. So he used to ask people, what made you come and see me? What did Lee say? And they said, we just trust him. So from an early age, I was able to generate trust. And I think it's because I don't lie. So unlike other salespeople that thought they had to lie, I just be honest with people. You can't make somebody buy a house that they don't want to buy. You might be able to talk somebody into buying a watch on the street for $20 that they don't want to buy.
Yeah.
But you can't make somebody buy a house they don't want to buy. You can make them say yes in the moment, but then they're going to go home and go, no, I don't want to buy it, which would happen.
Yeah, wait for the midnight in a cold sweat. Yeah.
Yeah, go you don't spend hundreds of thousands of pounds or dollars on something you don't want. That doesn't happen.
Definitely. Yeah.
So I figured out early that it was about relationships, and it was about getting people to trust you. And that meant trusting myself, and that meant being honest. And that's one of the reasons I left the real estate game, because it felt like a lot of my colleagues didn't have that approach. And for me, I need to be around people that see the world the way I see the world, which is I want to leave everything better than I found it. And as I moved out of, competing for the sake of competing in the real estate corporate company to creating my own, which had a better ethos, I believed, to then moving into, this is no longer serving me. It's not about money. And I went from earning a lot of money to earning nothing as a cycling coach when I first started. Like the sticker shock in the difference in wages was enormous.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I don't think I might have earned £20,000 in the first year as a cycling coach.
Oh.
That was probably a certainly a tenth of what I was earning as a real estate agent. So it was a huge change.
Yes.
But I needed to feel good about myself, and I needed to feel good about what I was doing in the world. So to come back, a bit tangential, but to come back and answer your question, sorry, buddy, there's lots of crossover because it's all really about human beings.
Yeah.
And my skill set is understanding human beings, and the word that you use, which I think is really important, and recognition.
Yeah.
So I'm good at recognizing the habits that people have that either serve them or don't serve them, and then supporting them and reflecting those back to them so they can enhance the ones that serve them and they can work on the ones that don't serve them. And as I develop that skill even more as a company coach, I'm really good at seeing the patterns in the company. So the culture in the company, the way people are communicating with each other and helping them communicate with each other differently to be more effective and get what they need.
Yes. I think so. It's interesting, like being good with people as well. It's a nice trait and a pattern recognition and understanding. Just before we dive into more the heavy coaching, just want to kind of sort of tie it together. So you're a real estate agent, and then you decide as a 30-something that you're going to go back into competitive cycling.
I mean, I've been doing it for fun at the local velodrome.
Yeah.
But I think it's an ego. I just wanted to know how good I could be.
Yes.
I'm very driven by not so much winning. Winning, there was definitely a component to winning, but more just pushing the boundaries to be the best.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So that's why I'm not a good coach for beginners or people who want to have fun. I'm a terrible coach for kids. Unless they're going to be Olympic champions. So the really high-performing kids, I was great with. I was a brilliant mentor for them. But, kids that come in to have fun on a Saturday morning, I was the worst coach you could imagine. I'm correcting their technique to a level that they never needed corrected to for them to get their experience from it. Yes, and people are looking at me and I'm like, do this and do that and do this. And like this little kid's like, what are you doing, buddy? I'm 8 years old. I just... And I recognized that pretty quickly and took myself out of those environments as much as I could. I work very well with very driven people that really want to be the best at what they do. Less driven people I don't work very well with. I'm not a good coach for, either in sports or now in leadership. And that's okay because I don't need to be a great coach for everybody. I need to be a good coach for my people.
Yes. That's and that's a good point, isn't it? Just back at the sort of general coaching thing. Actually, sometimes finding the right coach works, doesn't it? You that would be all the marginal gains, all the absolute precision. You to do this and this, and the fine percentages is one type of coach, but it's the other type of coach that might just get the 8-year-old going and getting around the velodrome at a decent speed. They can keep up with all their mates and they're happy. But that 8-year-old might turn into a 10-year-old and suddenly gets a dose of competitiveness. Then they come to you.
And that was what I would try to surround myself with, which was with coaches that were good at that earlier fun development stage. And then they would say, you need to go work with Lee now. My skill set is here. Lee's skill set is here. And I was always very clear about where my skill set was. And now as an adult, I broadened my ability to work with people in companies because that's important. And I'm still aware of where my skill set is. And I will bring other coaches in to work with people if I think I'm not the right coach for you. It's always what's most important is the client and that relationship that we have. And I can be a bit intimidating and I can be a bit like, we're doing this to be great, right? This is what we're here for. And that doesn't work for everybody. Yeah. So I think as I've got older, one of the gifts of getting older is just realizing what you are good at and what you're not good at.
Yeah.
And why I'm working on those edges and making it a bit wider. I don't need to try to work with people that aren't right for me or I'm not right for them. That does them a disservice. And I found it kind of de-energizes me. I don't enjoy working with them. So nobody benefits.
No, that's fair enough. And I think that's a good way of looking at it. And it's good. And it's, sort of to throw a sort of more car analogy, because I don't know cycling well enough to do a cycling one. But, if you've got somebody who wants to have a go at a car on the track and you're like, well, here's this Formula Ford we can go around. And actually they just want to go with an MX-5 or something small like that. You're more the Formula Ford kind of thing as somebody who wants to seriously get into it. And there are great people who teach you how to throw an MX-5 around at great speed if you want to.
Well, I do go-kart racing, so we can talk about cars. I progressed from track cycling to go-kart racing.
Like you do. Less pedaling.
Yes. I did a track day, and I drove a Lamborghini Gallardo. I hope I'm saying that right.
Yeah, I think so.
A Murcielago, and Subaru Impreza.
Oh, just a bit different.
Which of those do you think was the most fun to drive?
The Subaru.
By miles.
Yeah.
The Murcielago was a dog. It was horrible to drive, understeered everywhere. The Gallardo was fun, and the Subaru was by far the most fun. So I think, we have a perception of what's going to be fun and what high performance is, and then there's doing it and going, no, this is where the fun is. And if we can remove our egos from that, if I was going to buy a car to do track days, I would buy something like an MX-5 or a Subaru, where you don't need to go that fast to have a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, the car's limit's also closer to your ability rather than like a Gallardo where you've got to lean on it like a professional driver, and that's a different thing. So
and I definitely was not at that level at that point of driving a car.
I like these competitive streaks. Like, if I give up cycling, I'm going to race karts. But if you're 6 foot and 14 stone, that's not a good recipe for a fast karter.
Well, luckily, and I'm still very sad about this, there was a facility within an hour from me that had an arrive and drive rental series. So for your listeners, that means you turn up, you drive the go-kart. It's not your go-kart. You don't have to do any work to it. You don't have to prep it or anything. All the go-karts are identical or close enough. And it was insanely competitive. The standard was really high. You'd get professional drivers doing, professional motorsports over here that would come and do that as practice to keep their sharpness. So the standard was incredibly good. But the cart had to be weighted to 200 pounds. So that meant you and your kit had to weigh at least 200 pounds. So it put it on a level playing field for me. When I first started go-kart racing, I did indoor go-kart racing.
Yeah.
I was, driving against kids at 120 pounds. So, for UK audience, you're talking 8 to 9 stone. I was nearly twice that weight, and they were killing me. Yeah. When we went outdoors, the same people, when they had 80 pounds put in a go-kart, I beat them by a second.
Yeah.
So,
I
was just very lucky that was near here. Yeah.
Nice. So now you found out you're dyslexic, sort of recent times, sort of flashing back through your kind of career so far, or your life so far, because you've had many, many different careers. I can see a lot of dyslexic traits in there, pattern recognition, the ability to deal with people. Did light bulbs go off in your own head when you realized, you said about doing the test of dyslexia? Did you then start seeing a professional and asking them more about dyslexia? What did your next steps from there go?
Yeah, I had a couple of sessions with a coach. And basically what we found out is I'd already self-created the coping mechanisms that they were recommending that I would do. So I just kind of done it by luck or by just picking up things subconsciously, realizing what I was good at and what I was not good at. Using a lot of technology has really helped me.
Yes.
So, I'm so lucky now that we have all of these different things to help people like us. Mm-hmm. So, how my dyslexia would show up, not being able to spell things, not being able to think of the word. I have the word in my brain, it's not coming out. Looking up synonyms, getting on this. So, that's the word I want.
Yeah.
Using Siri to be able to spell a word that I can't spell well enough for spell check to understand.
Yes.
Using Grammarly to make my emails and my presentations and my blog posts more readable, because I would always miss words like the, at, and. So, Grammarly just finds all of those misses and sticks them in for you. So I think technology is a huge play. And probably that I've been an entrepreneur since an early age. Mm-hmm. So I've worked for myself from almost the entirety of my career. Even the role I had with USA Cycling was a separate program. I found the funder for it. I created the curriculum for it. I didn't have a huge amount of involvement with US Cycling itself. I ran the program because they didn't have a program, and I took it to them and went, guys, you got an Olympics here. When we did this I first took it to them. There was Olympics 12 years away. I'm like, you're 12 years away from the Olympics. You should know today your 14, 15 and 16-year-olds that are going to be your Olympic champions, because in track sprint cycling, it tends to be 25 to early 30s is the peak age for power development.
Yeah, okay.
And they needed to know those athletes now, and they had no idea. They had no way of finding them. So I took them this program and said, I'll do this. And they went, yeah, great. We don't have any money. So I went and found money to provide and create the program. So I've always had this strong entrepreneurial spirit, which has also probably saved me on looking stupid in front of my boss, from, getting things wrong on that level in front of somebody that I was working for.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's interesting you dive into entrepreneurial spirit and being an entrepreneur, and it's quite a lot of dyslexic people, as you well know, do that kind of thing. Did you find anything helps you a lot outside of the technology you cited? Is there any kind of more, so I suppose not non-technology techniques, thinking of like mind maps, something like that you found helped you out?
And this is probably a byproduct of the relationship with my father, but it just really helped my dyslexia. It's a ton of therapy. So therapy, men's groups, basic self-awareness.
Okay.
I wrote a post about this the other day. I think what my dyslexia did to me was it created this desire, and I mentioned this earlier, to prove how smart I was.
Yes.
As much to me as to other people, probably more to me than other people. So I would rub my intelligence in your face. And that was that's when I wasn't good with people. So I was good with people because I understood them. I listened really attentively, and I was able to see what they couldn't see about themselves and connect with them on a very deep level. And then I'd fuck it up by just needing to be too smart for my own good and pointing out things that they didn't need pointed out to them. When I first started cycling coaching, and for quite a while in it, to be honest, I was terrible at feedback, to the point now that I run feedback clinics because I had to learn the hard way how to give feedback. Because I'd walk into a velodrome and I'd be with my athletes, and then I'd see some other athletes doing stuff, and I'd be like, are they doing it like that? And I'd go up to them like, why are you doing it like that? Why don't you do it like this? Instead, this is much more efficient and you're going to go faster. Well, surprisingly, people don't like it when you go up to them and basically say, you're doing it wrong. Without
funny that.
asking for permission, without establishing some rapport, and without showing that you actually genuinely mean well for them. They tend to receive it as you're putting them down. And the intent for me has always been one of love. I'm a very loving human being. As I said earlier, I want to leave things better than I found them. That is basically my life's purpose. Leave the world better than you found it. But the language I was using and the approach I was using was having the opposite effect. And I'd be like, why are you upset? I'm giving you what's going to allow you to be a better athlete and go faster. But my approach was terrible. So doing my own work, realizing why I was causing, like fractions with people, and relationships, were disintegrating and having issues because of the way that I was feeding back what I could see. So I had this gift to see, but my skill set and my delivery were really poor. So as I learned more about that and why I was driven to be like that, and realized it genuinely came from love. And it's like, okay, if it comes from love and I really want people to be better at what they do, I've also got to own that the language I use and the approach I use must match that. That's the only reason I can do the job I do now. Because I coach people on really deep stuff, like, the familial stuff that's getting in the way of them being the best version of themselves, the habits that they learned in early childhood to protect themselves from their family environment and to survive in their family environment. I don't mean that in a judgmental way. We all learn ways of living in our family environment that when we're an adult don't serve us or don't serve us in the same way. And you have to deliver that in such a way that it doesn't hurt the other people and it empowers them and they learn how to live with that. So going through that experience of being really bad at delivering feedback has taught me the skill set that I need to be able to do what I do now.
Yeah, wow, that's really interesting. What sort of things did you have to put in place? Because as you said, it's clearly a thing from childhood and it's a place from caring, but it's how it's verbalized. But what did you have to did you have to untrain things or did you have to learn new things? I think is what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah, probably both. I mean, definitely both. Yeah. One thing I needed to realize is it's not my job.
Yes.
So I would take responsibility for how other people were showing up in the world. Be their personalities, be their physical performance. I'll be like, oh, I can see how you need to do that better. Well, I'm going to make it my responsibility for you to do it better. One of the first big realizations for me is I am not responsible for anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the old adage, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make it drink.
Yes.
So knowing that it's not my responsibility, and even though I have this strong desire for the world to be a better place, that can only work in partnership. You can't make that happen for somebody.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. Yeah.
So I crashed in 2010, broke 4 bones in my left shoulder. Yeah. And it was a pivotal moment. I wouldn't be in America without this having happened. I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now without this having happened. My life would look differently.
Yeah.
It was the first time in my life I was truly vulnerable, and I was no longer the hero in my own story because I was broken. I was, I was able to be broken. And there was a shift in my brain of like, oh, I'm vulnerable. Oh, what does it look like when I need help? I didn't know how to ask for help. And when I did, people couldn't even see that I needed help. I mean, I strongly remember a friend of mine, by coincidence, had a similar accident a couple of years before. We were at a race together. He crashed. I took him to the hospital. I stayed with him for the weekends, like looking after him while he was in the hospital, bringing him home, and he had an operation immediately. I crashed. I drove home by myself 4 hours. I got back, realized how bad it was, went and saw a consultant. The consultant was like, this is really bad. And I didn't want to even realize that. It was 7 days before the national championships. I was a defending national champion. I wanted to retain my national championships. Yeah. I went for a bike ride, and the only thing holding my arm in place was the tightness of the skin suit I was wearing. Like without that, my shoulder literally dislocated by itself. That's how messed up it was.
Yeah.
And it made me realize I needed to ask for help. And I asked the person who I'd looked after for the weekend to drive me to the hospital. And his response was, oh, you're all right, mate, just get a cab. And what he didn't realize was I was saying I'm scared. I need you to come hold my hand. He couldn't see that because I'd never asked for help in that way before. So it made me realize, Matthew, that I needed to understand how to even ask for help. Not just that I needed to ask for help, the actual process of asking for help and what that looked like. I'd set up my relationships so that I was okay, I was a hero, and the people around me needed help, and that made me feel good about myself. And then I had that realization very quickly that, oh my God, this is not healthy for me. This is not serving me for the rest of my life. I was in a relationship with somebody. We'd been together for 4 years. She had no idea how to cope with me being vulnerable. We'd broken up within 6 weeks. And it was like just a bang, a massive shift in my life about who I wanted to be. And realizing that I needed to be vulnerable. I needed support, and I wasn't going to get what I wanted in life, the fulfillment and the relationships I wanted in life, unless my relationships were more equal. And I renegotiated some relationships. I ended some friendships. I was like, this isn't serving me anymore. And really just got much more intentional about the way that I move through the world.
Yeah. Wow. And I remember reading, you did a post about that crash. And it's interesting, just to add more colour to it, that you got stopped by a friend at the velodrome because you were about to jump back on the bike after going there because you were like, I'm fine. And he's like, no, you're not. So get out of here.
I'm gutted. I can't remember his name. He was a doctor. And, we laugh about it because I've had to do a urine test in front of him. So he'd always tease me. And he's like, I've seen it, Lee. I've seen it. Because if you've ever had if you've ever been drug tested, it's an unpleasant experience where the doctor stands right next to you and watches you go.
Yeah, just very dignified,
It's not the most. And he was wonderful because he saw how bad the crash was. He immediately stopped me and said, no, you're not getting back on your bike. And I was swearing at him. I'm like, I'm getting back on my bike. Like, we're going to do the rerun. And he's like, no. And he just calmly stood in front of me and went, no. And Luckily he did, because, then I started to feel the pain and I just couldn't move my arm. And if you want even more color to it, we went to the hospital. I got x-ray. They told me I hadn't broken anything. And I'm like,
what?
No, this is wrong. Like this,
Yeah.
I've dislocated my arm before. This is completely different to that. And they're like, no, you haven't broken anything. The doctor grabbed my arm and he moved my arm around to test the range of movement, and he pulled my arm out of the joint.
Oh.
So he dislocated my arm. I'm there with my arm like this. The doctor ran away, and I'm not joking. He literally just turned around and sprinted away. I started swearing at him. The nurse is rubbing my head and saying, calm down. I put my shoulder back into place, and they sent me home with basically some paracetamol.
What?
And then I came back to Brighton. So this was in Newcastle under Lyme, 4 hours away. I drove back from there by myself with just paracetamol. Got home. I'm like, this is not right. Luckily, I had private healthcare, so I went to Nuffield the next day. Had a CT scan, and what didn't show up on the X-ray showed up on the CT scan, and it was like, oh no, you've broken the top of the ball was completely shattered. The bone that goes across the top called the acromion was broken. There's another little bone on top here. I can't remember that was fractured. I'd torn the labrum. It was an absolute mess. The consultant that did the operation said it was as bad as any injury he'd seen with professional rugby players, and that was who most of his clients were. He worked with usually professional rugby players. Yeah.
Well, cycling stuff is dangerous.
But when you think it's a bit of a stupid sport, the highest speed I've hit on the velodrome by myself is about 45 mile an hour. Wow. And the highest I've hit chasing a motorbike is over 50 mile an hour.
Yeah.
And you're wearing a reasonably flimsy crash helmet and a bit of Lycra.
Yeah, where the motorcyclist is wearing full textiles and a hardcore crash helmet. Yeah, and a pair of gloves and boots. Yeah. So accidents are luckily reasonably rare, but I've had 3 or 4, and this was the worst one. This was the one that really caused the damage. Yeah. And I know there's a lot more going on than this, but it's interesting. I'm sort of hearing that story and thinking sometimes how my approach should be to something like that. Like I've driven a car home with a broken wrist, with it just up in the air because it's the right hand and I can steer with it and change gears fine. And unloaded.
I had an automatic. I didn't need my right hand.
Unloaded my motorbox off the trailer, whatever. Take myself up and then go to hospital. But I just sort of tying it back to dyslexia. And there's a bit of talking to a few people, and some of this is my experience as well, that dyslexic resilience is great because you learn that because school doesn't work for you and stuff. And it's not all just that, but it's the other side of it, isn't it? Like that fierce, independent, I will sort this. It can then really work against you in situations like that where you just, no, I need to stop and get somebody else to help me out. Like being the rugged, independent person is not what I need to be at this particular point in time, but you don't do it, do you?
I have a very high pain tolerance. I don't know if that's genetic or just from years of training a sport that's painful, or, sprint sport is painful. I don't know, but I just have a really high pain tolerance. So it honestly didn't feel that bad. I mean, going over speed bumps hurt, but most of it was like, I deal with that. But, one of the things that really struck me, I was walking down the road with my girlfriend not long after this had happened, and my arm's in a sling. And I'd never thought about defending us. Like it never actually crossed my head that I might physically need to get into a fight and defend us. I guess it'd been there some point in my brain as a man.
Yeah.
But this was the first time I walked down the road and thought I couldn't defend us. If somebody attacked us now, I couldn't defend us. And I'd done boxing as a kid, and I worked on the doors. So I stopped my kind of elite cycling at about 21. That was when I realized I'm just not going to make this, right?
Yeah.
So from kind of 18 to 21, I used to work on the doors of nightclubs and casinos. I would work in the evening and I'd train during the day. Looking back now, terrible for recovery. Not a great way to be an elite athlete.
Probably not the best.
I didn't know it at the time. I didn't have a good enough understanding of physiology at the time. But regardless of that, that's what I did. So I kind of always felt I don't like having fights, but I felt reasonably confident that, I didn't even think about defending us. And I'm walking down the road and thinking, I couldn't defend us. Wow, what does that mean? What does that mean about me? I'm just asking myself all of these questions all of a sudden about who am I? What does this mean? Am I going to be okay in the future? What do I need? And realizing I just needed a lot more from all of my relationships. I needed a lot more support. Even I've been in men's groups for a long time. And even at that point, I've been in them for a while. And I kind of became the de facto leader of our local men's group, even though I was the youngest, because I could see the patterns and I could see what was going on. And there'd be kind of discussions and stuff. And then eventually I'd be the one that would go, right, this is what we're going to do, guys. This is how I think we should move forwards. And the other guys would go, oh, all right, yeah, you summed it up nicely. Let's do that. So I'd always been a leader whatever groups I was in. I was a manager in the real estate game. I was the youngest manager for the corporate company. Then I owned my own real estate business. I'm obviously the owner and the manager of that.
Yeah.
I was a coach, which is a managerial position, leading teams, leading athletes. And I had that realization that just because I'm naturally born leader doesn't mean I don't need support. And that was a massive shift for me, like a huge shift of, oh God, I need support too. Yeah. And I was burnt out. I was exhausted supporting everybody else without getting support myself.
Yes, definitely. And that is a trap to fall into, isn't it? Being everybody else's friend, mentor, coach, or leader, and forgetting that you need somebody to help you out as well. And it's this kind of circular relationship sometimes.
Well, and also, it's not that great being in a relationship with somebody who's pointing out all the things that you need and never needing things themselves. I miss the relational aspect of that. It creates a lot of trust and connection when you can say to people, I need your help. I value you. I need your support. I need you to tell me what you're seeing that I can't see. So instead of it being, oh, I'm smarter than you, I can see everything. It's like, I'm smart and I also need your feedback and I also need your support. And what is the blind spots about me that I can't see that you can feed back to me?
Definitely. Not smart at everything.
No. And one of my friends, I was away celebrating my 50th birthday in Palm Springs with a few mates. And nice. One of my friends said to me, one of the things he really likes about me is I don't pretend to know about things I don't know about, because we're out with guys, we're having those discussions, everyone's weighing in with their opinion. And if it's a subject I have no opinion on or I don't know anything about, I don't pretend that I know something about it. There's areas I'm world-class at and there's areas I'm clueless at. So why would I offer my opinion? I mean, I could be curious in those conversations and learn, but I'm not going to offer my opinion and advice or teaching on something I just don't know about because that doesn't help anyone.
No, and I think it's a good sign of an open person. If somebody insecure would try and have an answer for everything, and it takes somebody with their own personal security to admit they don't know.
I got that feedback from an athlete once. So this is an interesting bit of feedback for any coaches listening to this of any sort. I coached somebody. They went on to be part of the British program after I finished coaching them. And we were chatting one day and they said, I still really miss working with you. And I was like, oh, that's really flattering. Well, why do you miss working with me? You're working with some of the best coaches in the world. And they said, yes, but you were able to say, I don't know. And he said, the other coaches that I work with, they won't say that. They'll give me an answer when they don't know. And what I really want them to do is tell me that they don't know, because then I trust them. Instead of giving me some, flippant answer. And he'd taken a problem to the coach and the coach was like, oh, that's never going to work. And he's like, have you looked into it? Oh, yes, I've looked into it. And he knew they hadn't. So I think, there's a lot of trust that can be created by saying, I don't know. And you can say, I'll go and find out, or I'll find somebody that knows more than us. And as I progressed in my sports coaching career, instead of thinking I had to have all the answers, I went and searched for people that were experts in physiology, aerodynamics, strength and conditioning. And one, to upskill me, but then also to bring them in and share with my athletes, hey, I'm going to invite this person in and they're going to come and talk to us and share with us.
Yeah, because and you need to pull these people together because that's how you drive things forwards, isn't it? it's a team of experts and a team of specialists, not one person who knows it all.
And that's what coaching used to be, right? Sports coaching used to be the coach was the god, the coach says everything. Now athletes have access to the internet, and you can talk to them about how this is the strength training regimen we're going to use, and they can look up and go, well, I saw a study over here that said this is better.
Yeah. You've mentioned a few times about men's groups, and I'm really curious to get a little bit more into that. Now, can you sort of define what they are for anybody who doesn't know, and what you got out of them, and how do they help you?
So back to the father. So my dad would be clinically described as a sociopathic narcissist.
Wow.
So pretty much unable to have empathy for others. So everything was about him and how he could get something from other people. Only interested in me if I was doing something that he was interested in. Otherwise, and I got it the best out of most of the children he'd had because I was good at the sport that he enjoyed. Terrible to my mum, cheated on her continually, lied about everything. I have no idea about my dad's life because he lied about everything to do with his childhood. So I didn't really know what being a man was.
Yeah,
I kind of had one version of it.
Yep, not a great version.
Was not a great version. Womanizing, treating people poorly. I knew that didn't fit with my heart and what I wanted, but that was my role modeling. So from an early age, I was searching for mentors, and I befriended a lot of older men because of this. Some that were good and some that were not good role models. And a friend of mine, I was seeing this chiropractor. And he said to me, some of the issues with your back are structural, but some are stress. And I think you should see my friend James. James was a therapist. I went and saw James, did therapy, and James introduced me to the concept of men's groups. Okay. And the point of it is a space where you can go and share what's going on from you with a group of men that aren't going to judge you. They're not going to tell you what to do. They might offer some feedback and they might offer what they're seeing, but they're not like, you need to do this. It's more like, hey, this is what I see. How does this land for you? And I was lucky enough to find that fairly early. I was kind of, I must have been in my mid-20s when I first started going to men's groups, maybe even slightly before that. And I got to be around healthy men. And I got to be around men that were sharing about what was going on for them, with other men going, yeah, that's going on for me too. And yeah, I'm stressed about that too. And yeah, that scares me. And as I said at the beginning, to begin with, I kind of tried to fit in as a leadership role and share less of myself and be there more for them. And as time has gone on, that's gone completely opposite. And I'm like, right, I'm in this to be there for to share and to give of myself. And it taught me how to have relationships with men. Before that, I kind of saw men as somebody that you went clubbing with to meet women or you did sport with. But I didn't really have the strong relationships that I wanted with men, like friendships I wanted with men.
Okay.
Since then, my friendships with men have increased dramatically. I have a ton of really good friends. During COVID, I started a men's group for my friends. So every Wednesday morning, me and my friends meet and we have our own group. And that's changed the dynamic of our friendships and deepened that.
Really?
And I also run men's groups myself as a facilitator. And, they're beautiful. Like guys coming together and just sharing what's going on for them. We do a bit of teaching. So there's some emotional language and models that we use to understand the world, to communicate with each other, to kind of get more from your experience in the world and to be more effective and to just find more joy and handle conflict, all that kind of stuff. But there's just something beautiful created about a group of people coming together with the aim of supporting each other.
And you found that's helped you not just with your interaction with men, does it help you with your interaction with women and children and all that kind of thing as well?
It helps my interaction with everybody because I'm a better version of me. So, being a better version of me allows me to have better relationships with everybody. I had better relationships with women. I always found it easier to be around women than men when I was younger.
Yeah.
Men were, it was competition. Now I'm not like that, but that's how I was.
Yeah.
Now I separate my urge for competition from being in competition with other men to being in competition with myself. So now it's about being the best version of me rather than needing to be better than other people. And that's allowed me to really empower, coach and support other people. I couldn't have become a cycling coach without having done this, because I would have tried to be in competition with my athletes. And I've seen that. I've been in a situation where a coach, where his athletes were training in the gym, a coach came in, physically an ex-Olympic level athlete. These were young athletes. The coach was an ex-Olympic level athlete. He came in and just started lifting more than the athletes. Immediately, kind of just putting them down and joking about it. It's like, guys, like I can warm up with what you can lift. What are you doing here? And it's like, yeah, you're an adult. These are children. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. How to destroy their confidence in one foul swoop.
Exactly. So, while it was fun to train with my athletes, I was never needing to beat my athletes. I desperately wanted my athletes to beat me, because for me, that was the recognition of my coaching, was once my athletes were beating me and I was pretty good, then they're on the way to getting really good.
Yeah. And I imagine also that person goes in the gym and he feels like the number one man in front of, 20 athletes, however many people are in the gym at that point. But if you're able to coach an Olympic gold medalist, your coaching is proving to work in front of thousands of people. So you ultimately win anyway.
I've got to that point now, and I wouldn't say I don't have an ego, because that would be a lie. And I still, find myself checking it and noticing when I find envy. One of the things that came up in that psilocybin mushroom journey was still some things around envy, and really wanting to work on that for myself personally. But really for me, I just want everybody to have a better experience. I want to have as big an impact as possible. So that was partly why I moved on from sport, because while I was having a very big impact on the people I was working with, I'm working with a team of 10 to 12 athletes at one time. It's not a lot of people. Before that, I was mainly coaching masters athletes. So that is 35 plus serious hobbyists, because they could afford to pay my fee, but yes. they're not going on they're not going to the Olympics, right? They're taking it seriously, and they're great athletes, and some of them train like Olympians. Don't get me wrong; they took it seriously.
But they're not going to be the 28-year-old Olympian.
But I'm not influencing a generation. I'm not changing the world. So why I do what I do now, a lot of it is driven because I want the biggest impact I can. I do men's groups. Those men have better relationships. They father their children better. They're better husbands. They're better friends. They're better brothers and sisters. So I can improve my impact on the world by them going out and being better people. And then when I work with these companies, I work with the leadership teams of these companies. That affects the whole company. Everybody in that company goes out and be a better person and just role models that. So I really want the biggest effect possible like that.
Yeah. And that brings me nicely on to what's it like for moving from the sports coaching arena to your CEO and organization arena? What experience did you carry over, and how different is it when you're dealing with your sort of corporate world?
Not as different as you would think.
No.
The personalities are very similar. The kinds of people that exceed at high level sport are the kinds of people that exceed in creating their own companies.
Yes.
There's some differences in maybe the kind of the way their brains work around creativity. And I tend to work with very creative people. It was interesting. As a young man, I used to think I was incredibly uncreative because I'm not artistic. But actually, I'm very creative with the way that I work, with words, with thinking about human beings. I just didn't realize that was creativity, and it is. And I have so many ideas. I wake up in the middle of the night often and have to write my ideas down to go back to sleep. Yeah. At that point, I equated creativity with like, can I paint? Can I draw? Well,
yes.
Those things.
Yeah.
So I tend to work with creative people that match my kind of energy there and curiosity. And that I'm very curious, and I tend to work with people that are quite curious and are looking for lots of different ways to be better and optimize their lives. And that's all athletes want to do. Good athletes, the better the athlete is usually, the more curious they are, the more open they are to being coached, the more they're looking for different ways to optimize what they do. And you can get the odd athlete that's just a physical savant, right? They're just so bloody physically gifted that they're going to succeed whatever they do. Getting a little bit harder in a more optimized sporting world now, because there's probably going to be someone else nearly as gifted as them who's much more optimized. So it's a bit harder to be that just pure physical exception. But in the leadership game, it's very, very smart people who are very driven, and they just want to understand how to do that effectively. So how to harness their talents. And my gift is helping them harness their talents the most effective way possible for them, both emotionally, for their emotional health, for the health of their companies. I do a lot of work helping people make really tough decisions, firing co-founders, that kind of thing, where they know that the people they're working with have got to a certain level and they're not going to get to the next level the company needs them to go to. And I like to reframe that to, well, actually, you're releasing them to go and get into what's going to be their zone of genius. If their zone of genius isn't what they're in right now, let's let them go and find what it is. Let's support them in doing that. I always want to help people when we're letting people go. I like to refer people to somewhere else. I like to help them work on what it could be that they could be doing that is better and different to what they're doing now, that suits them better. And just helping people kind of move past their personal fears and insecurities. And it usually comes back to the very simple thing of, we all want to be liked, and we're behaving in ways that we believe are going to help us get liked. And quite often, they're not really the ways that are going to help us get liked.
Yes, we do things to try and be liked, but we end up being counterproductive to the whole thing. Yeah, funny, isn't it? Funny how we're wired like that.
That's maybe for another podcast. I can tell you why we're wired like that.
I think that would be for another podcast. We've gone an hour already. Okay, we're going to leave that sort of tidbit out there for now. And I'm going to start winding this part one, maybe, of the podcast up. Now, every guest that I have on this podcast gets 3 rapid fire questions from me. They don't need rapid fire answers from you, but they're quick questions from me. So let's dive into
Bring it on.
Let's dive into question number 1 then. What prejudice have you had about dyslexia that's been proven wrong?
What prejudice? My own, that it meant I was dumb. That meant there was something wrong with me. My understanding now, as I research it more and understand myself more, is I just learn differently. That's the biggest takeaway from me, is I learn differently from other people. It's not good or bad. It's just differently.
Yes.
And that's helped me understand that as a teacher, I need to teach in a multitude of ways to support the learning of the people that I'm with. So it's been a gift for me as a teacher, because to understand that I learn differently means that, well, other people might learn differently, and I need to be as well-rounded as I can be in my teaching approach. And I personally need to be as well-rounded as I can be in my learning approach.
Yes.
So, learning differently doesn't mean you're dumb. That would be one.
Yes, definitely. Okay, and question number 2. If an alien landed and you had to describe dyslexia to them, how would you do it?
Well, why not just be bloody excited that an alien had actually found us? Because of the charm. I mean, I think there's got to be life somewhere else in the vastitude of the universe. But how would I describe it to them? I would say, my name's Lee, and I'm a little bit different from most people. And that's both a curse and a gift. And I like to lean into the gift of it and lessen the impact of the curse.
Yes. And I think that's what we should all do, lean into the gifts and the strengths rather than focusing on maybe downsides. Because sometimes the downsides disappear when you've realised the strengths there.
Well, I used to see this a lot as a sports coach. Coaches would be trying to train their athletes to be really good at things that had a minimal impact, while missing the things that had a huge impact.
Okay.
And I see this in culture now. So you've got people doing ice baths and infrared saunas, but they don't eat optimally, and they especially don't sleep optimally.
Yes.
Like, sort your sleep out before you worry about anything else. An ice bath, if you're not sorting your sleep out, is a complete waste of time.
Yes. Yeah, best performance enhancing drug to man, sleep is apparently.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And the final of these rapid fire sets, and seeing as this podcast is called the Dyslexia Life Hack Show, what is your favorite dyslexia life hack?
Oh, technology. Siri. Being able to speak into a phone and say a word. Luckily, there is the British accent Siri, because when I first moved to America and I was using the American version, you couldn't understand a word I was saying. But now that kind of technology is so good, it very rarely translates it differently from what I'm saying. So I think really leaning into technology, I'm starting to get excited about AI. I'm starting to practice that for writing longer blogs for me.
Yeah.
Because that kind of stuff takes energy, and I struggle a bit with the structure. So getting sentences in the right order, getting the whole thing in the right order. So what I can do is propose something to AI, it writes it out for me, and then I can make it my own.
Yeah. AI is really, really interesting, and I've heard a few dyslexics, and myself included, where you can't get started, you're struggling with structure, you can kind of use that to just push the ball, and then you're off. It just needs a shove. And then
as a leadership coach and company performance coach, it is changing the world already very rapidly, but this is the next. So if the internet was the last big change, this will be the next big change where working will change. We just had a mild bit of that with COVID and hybrid and remote working. And that's a big thing for my work, is helping people work remotely, because that changes culture massively.
Yes, it does.
People feel much more isolated, and we have to make new ways of doing that. Well, AI is going to change it again, and it's going to be a bigger leap than that.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so that leads me to just ask you, is there anything else you'd like to add, and where can people find you if you want them to get in contact with you, that is?
MaximizeYourPotentialCoaching.com. I'm actually going to be changing that to PoveyPerformance.com. That'll be coming soon. I'm doing a big rebrand at the moment.
Okay.
But you'll find me anywhere under my name, Lee Povey. So I'm pretty I'm going to say Googleable. Is that a word?
Just now. Googleable? Yeah, I think I've heard someone say it before.
Let's try searchable. I'm pretty searchable. So just search me under Lee Povey. You'll find me, no problems. And I'd love to talk to anybody. So the way I look at my purpose in the world is, yes, I like earning money, and I am very skilled at what I do. So I get to charge good money for what I do. And I'm not driven by earning money. Money for me is just about freedom. It's not about how much money I have in my bank account. And that gives me the flexibility to talk to anybody for free. So I don't charge for any initial consultations, because I want to have an impact on the world. And it's really important to me. It's the same reason why I do my men's groups at a very low cost, because I want to have a big impact on the world, not for my ego, but because I think people need help.
Yeah.
And, the more we have technology, the more we have distancing created by technology, the more we have to understand how to work with each other as human beings.
Yes, definitely. Well, that just leaves me to thank you very much for coming on the show and being so open and raw with me as well during the podcast.
My pleasure, Matthew. What's the point in hiding?
Wow, yes. But no,
it doesn't serve me. It doesn't serve anybody listening. When I come on things like this, my hope is somebody listens to my journey or what I'm sharing and goes, oh, wow, I didn't realize that could be possible for me. Or, oh, that's something that makes me think I'm not strange or weird and that's why I love what you're doing here, because by talking about dyslexia and having people come on and share about their journey with dyslexia, you are normalizing it. So anybody listening to this can go, oh, I'm not odd, I'm not broken as I thought, I'm not dumb. I'm just different, and different's okay. And how do I leverage that difference to have a better experience in the world?
Yes, definitely. Yes, that's great thought on it. And I thank you for the compliments as well.
Oh, you've been great. You've been a wonderful host and some fascinating questions. I can't be a good podcast guest unless the host is asking the right questions. So it's you that actually makes somebody a good podcast guest.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Thank you very much. Now, that just leads me to, again, thank you for coming on. And thank everybody else for taking the time to listen. And I'll talk to you in the next episode. Goodbye for now.